right, we'll call the regular meeting to order and immediately recess and move into our public hearings. First, the purpose of the first public hearing is Bylaw 33, 2018, Land Use Bylaw Amendment R1 setbacks. Ms. Holmes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am presenting Bylaw 33/2018 for public hearing this evening. Thank you. So the purpose of this bylaw is to change the side yard setbacks in the R1 district from 1.5 to 1.2 meters. In October of 2016, Bylaw 26/2016 increased the side yard setbacks for dwellings in the R1 district from 1.2 to 1.5 meters in response to a notice of motion regarding community enhancements. The concept was based on the need to reinforce new communities needing to maintain a unique appearance, the feel and character of Cochrane, and it was envisioned that an increase in the side yard setback would provide Cochrane residents with increased privacy, improved streetscaping, and better capacity for street parking. At the time, there were concerns brought forward regarding existing subdivision approvals, so the new bylaw came into effect on January 1st of 2017. Since the bylaw came into effect, no new subdivisions have been approved with R1 lots in them except for in precedents where there are 8 lots included. Generally, subdivision applicants are choosing the R2 zoning, which accommodates multiple housing types, including single detached dwellings, and the intended streetscape and neighborhood improvements that were envisioned are not coming to fruition. Now, that's not to say that there are not R1 land use areas rezoned. It's just that the R2 ones are moving ahead in advance. So, through discussions with the development community, administration is proposing to change the setback to the original 1.2 meters. The proposal was circulated to all internal departments and external agencies, and changing the setback back to 1.2 is in alignment with the Alberta Building Code, provides options and flexibility in housing styles and built form, and increases housing affordability in the Cochrane market. The Municipal Development Plan is a statutory plan mandated by the Municipal Government Act to be the town's comprehensive long-range policy document that guides council, administration, developers, and residents in the land use planning process, and is the primary planning document for the town to use when considering all future land use plans, development, and uses. Section 1 sets out planning principles and goals for Cochrane, which are derived from the community values and vision for Cochrane in the MDP. They are to guide development and to provide a framework for decision-making bodies. And the first planning principle is to employ responsible growth management, which demands that the town make every effort to meet the needs of a growing population in an ecologically aware and efficient manner, using limited natural, human, built, and financial resources. 2 of the goals of this principle is to use our limited land base and infrastructure efficiently, as well as managing growth in a way that enables the town to provide and maintain public services. Section 8 of the MDP comprises of the policies which apply to land use and development proposals. Generally, these policies include guidance for residential development to meet a minimum density target, to provide a variety of housing types, to enhance customer choice of residential dwellings and encourage dwellings to be competitively priced, to be developed in a compact, low-impact, cost-effective, and efficient form, and maximize the utilization of existing infrastructure, including access points and community services. The proposed bylaw responds to these policies by providing a variety of housing designs and encouraging consumer choice, as well as cost-effective and efficient forms of housing. So what are the impacts of changing a side yard setback? The options of accommodating an increase in side yard setbacks does not automatically result in increased lot sizes or bigger backyards. It potentially simply results in narrower homes. In some cases, maintaining the square footage of a home is a priority and could be maintained by increasing the building depth if the lot depth can allow. If homes are lengthened to accommodate the change in the side yard, this potentially reduces private amenity space in the rear. If the lot width remains static, the addition of the 1 foot of side yard setback on each side results in a reduced or narrower building envelope for the parcel. Whichever option is chosen, the other regulations, such as front and rear yard setbacks, must be adhered to. The reduced building envelope potentially limits the ability to provide a variety of housing design types and diversity along the streetscape. The bylaw is simply considering the side yard setback of single detached dwellings. These figures, as included in your report, include all of the other R1 regulations, which are the minimums that create the parameters of what an R1 lot can be. Things like lot width at 9 meters, lot area at a minimum of 300 meters squared, front and rear yard setbacks, 6 meters for front drive garage product and 7.5 meters in the rear. Lot depth is only provided as an estimate minimum in order to meet the lot area requirements. And as you can see from the difference between the 1.2 side yard setbacks and the 1.5 side yard setback is that there is a reduction in buildable area, but no other minimums or dimensions are changed. Next, will the proposed side yard setback have a material impact on street parking capacity? Each R1 lot is required to provide 2 parking stalls for the residential use of the property. So a front drive double garage product automatically provides 4 stalls with the driveway in front. So there's the house and there's a gray section for the driveway, and then would be the 4 stalls. The lot width minimum is 9 meters in the R1 district. Commonly, lot widths are measured in feet, and thus a common lot width is 9.14 or 30 feet. The minimum width for 2 parking stalls is 5.5 meters or 18 feet. Thus, a front drive garage product, we can assume this as a minimum garage width. There is also no maximum garage width. A sampling of real property reports in newer areas indicates that a slim front-facing side-attached front door is approximately 1.24 or 1.28. And so that's the area of the front door in between the edge of the garage and the edge of the main building. And it is also typical that the developer's architectural controls ensure that front drive garages are coupled together and create space on the opposite side. So there would be a couple here and a coupled pair there, and thus creating the space shown on the slide here. So this leaves 4.88 meters approximately in between garages and driveways for street parking. This distance accommodates for most typical cars, SUVs, and small trucks. An increase of 0.6 meters, 1 additional foot for each property, results in 5.48 meters and does not create additional parking stalls nor accommodates actual large truck lengths. The additional space does not increase the total number of spaces in between homes, nor does it lengthen the space to fit every possible vehicle type. And this is what it would look like if we logically extended the pattern down the street for 1.5 meter setbacks, showing that no new parking stalls are created. And this is what it would logically look like if we extended the 1.2. Similarly, the same number of parking stalls, it's just slightly different distance. So again, just as a reminder, this bylaw is considering the side yard setback for single detached dwellings in R1 district. By continuing to use the 1.5 meter setback, the available building footprint is reduced while all the other minimum lot regulations and dimensions stay the same. So tonight is the public hearing, obviously, and then second and third reading will be scheduled for the bylaw to come back to council for consideration after this. And so thank you. That concludes my presentation for bylaw 33 this evening, and I'm available for any questions that you might have. I also wanted to acknowledge that we heard the request at council for first reading to discuss zero lot lines and have committed to look into zero lot line development with the land use bylaw update project. This will be a separate process from this bylaw tonight, and if considered, could result in a distinct land use district for the zero lot line product. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Council, is there any questions of administration before we move to the speakers list? No. I've got one.
Sure.
So the 1.2, moving to 1.2, the developer or home builder does not have to go to 1.2. They could go 1.2 on one side and leave the other side larger. Like I think we've seen that in Glen Eagles in the past where it's just shifted the whole home over and had one skinny side yard and one larger side yard. Is that still, this is a minimum, not, you know what I'm trying to say?
So to answer your question, Mr. Mayor, absolutely, all of these numbers are minimums. You could have a longer driveway. The minimum is 6 meters. You could have a larger rear yard, which is probably the most common. The minimum is 7.5 meters. The side yard similarly, currently is 1.5, and the bylaw is moving to 1.2, but absolutely the builder or the future home buyer could choose a certain house type or design that would have different side yard setbacks as long as they are within those parameters. But for administration's perspective, we have to work in a world of minimums. So we have to consider what, at the minimum, this is what can be expected.
And further to that, I mean, you mentioned in your report, but the minimum width of a lot is not changing.
It is not being proposed to change at this time, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, we've got one over here, Councillor
Yes.
McFadden.
So can you pull up your pro and con list that was at the beginning of the presentation?
Oh, sorry.
So can you just speak, narrow homes, the setback, longer homes, I get that. Can you just speak to the potential consequences around the fences, entrances, vents, and cantilevers? Because the cantilevers was just a concept I'd only recently learned, if you could just expand on that one.
Sure. To answer your question through the mayor, a cantilever is the technical term. It's usually to accommodate a portion of the building that extends out to accommodate something like a fireplace or like a bay window that only extends out for a portion of the wall, and then it doesn't go all the way through to the foundation. That is what a cantilever is.
So with the narrower lot, does that minimize the use of cantilevers or increase it? What's the impact, I guess, is what I was trying to understand.
The amount of cantilevers and the distance that a cantilever can go is regulated both in the land use bylaw and in the building code. And I suppose it depends, in the building code, it depends on what it is for, that will determine the precise fire rating that is required. And it depends how much it goes into the setback. Sorry, can
I
you,
was looking more of a pro-con than,
of being used?
yeah, so so if I've got my side yard setback,
Mhm.
and I've said, hey, I've got my new house I'm building, I want to put a fireplace in, and so that's going to go into the cantilever style, it's gonna go into the side yard setback.
Mhm.
Does that mean that my entire house has to get smaller to allow that, or does the cantilever is not impacting the lot line at all?
No, it shouldn't impact that. There's a maximum projection that a cantilever can go into the side yard, which I believe is 0.61, which means that it has to be set back from the property line at a minimum of 0.59. So there's still a minimum of 2 feet from the property line, and that's regardless of the height of the cantilever. So even if it's a cantilever that doesn't start until the second story, that is still true.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. First speaker on the list, Charles Bokler. Did I get that right, Charles?
Bokler, Beckler, close enough, sir. Thank you. Thanks, thanks, buddy. Awesome.
Just give it a second.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. I have copies too, Riley, if you want. There's the copies. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Good evening. My name is Charles Beckler. I stand before you today on behalf of Build Calgary Region. We represent just under 700 businesses operating in this region and many in Cochrane. These are members who are investing in land, placing service pipes, laying roadways, constructing parks, designing homes, pouring foundations, framing walls, painting rooms, plumbing and wiring services, selling living spaces, and pretty much everything in between. On behalf of those members, we advocate for choice and affordability. And in that capacity, we speak in favor of the proposed bylaw 33-2018 to return R1 setbacks to 1.2 meters or 4-foot side yards as a minimum. Coincidentally, myself, as a developer at the time, and Build, spoke in opposition when the 2016 council heard this item. So if nothing else, I hope that shows we're consistent, persistent, and certainly want to continue to do business with you, regardless of your decision tonight. Tonight, I hope to help council understand how approval of this land use bylaw amendment will improve such things as residential and home buyer choice and affordability, your property tax assessment return, streetscape variety limitations will be removed, and long-term land use efficiencies will be enhanced. And as well, hopefully town maintenance and life cycle costs will be decreased. Taking into consideration all the factors involved in community design, it can be overwhelming, and factors which are individual and which are communal often get confused. I would like to acknowledge that the intent of the 2014 motion was completely understandable and supported, in that it sought to ensure that development and increasing population impacts the Cochrane community positively, and council endeavored with that to take a close look at the policies and regulations they have in place to ensure they are working to keep the overall feel of Cochrane as a quality place to live, work, and play. 4 years later, and even 2 years ago, when the matter was brought to public hearing, there was much confusion. And there was outside of that, things were brought into it involving street parking, safety, livability, access, more trees, to name several. I will offer some insight into those with this slide, or hope to. So parking being one of the bigger issues that was talked about in relative to livability in the community. So I use that as one eye here, and you have those, may have those in front of you now. From 4 feet to 8 feet, or 4 feet to 5 feet, sorry. If the garage is paired, you've got 4 feet in each side yard. That's 8 feet between the driveways. Your average car length is 15 feet. I'm pretty sure the average truck in Cochrane is much longer from when I developed, but adding 2 feet does not create a parking spot between driveways. On, say, an average I've used a 36-foot front drive lot as the example, because obviously if there is no front drive garage, the size of the side yard and the size of the garage and driveway aren't effective in alleviating that. So if you have the other side of the yard, say a 20-foot wide garage, which is somewhat standard with an 18-foot wide garage door, you're 12 foot on each yard, that's 24, that's room for one car, leaves you at about 11 feet left over, which 2 more feet don't get you to another 15-foot car. Tree landscaping, so the crosshatched area that I show here is one of the primary concerns you have for lot landscaping. That's your utility right-of-way. Widening the side yard only makes that wider. It's the depth of it that impacts. So it'll still stretch from driveway to driveway, and will reduce the impact to have a tree or any landscaping within the first 3.5 meters of the private lot on each home. Another one that's been brought up is fire safety. So I just offer, it's 4-foot side yards are the National Fire Code for residential building setback requirements. Those are carried over to Alberta Provincial Code, and then of course the municipalities. Livability. So I just wanted to offer, because this came up at your planning commission, what are other municipalities doing? Residents in Calgary, Alberta, Airdrie, Okotoks, and Cochrane pre-2016 all have homes built with 4-foot side yards, and all those other municipalities still use 4 feet as the minimum side yard setback for their homes. I think it's important to note as well that that one tends to cover accessibility, which was also raised at CPC in terms of ability to get in and out of the yard. 4-foot side yards is what's being used elsewhere and is functioning. That's not to sully the importance of all those factors, of course, you need to balance in terms of lifestyle, livability, and your municipality. And that the wants, needs, or desires of your council. And to that end, perhaps arguably the original planning radical, sorry Tara, simplified the importance of sound holistic design when she said that the town is organized complexity. While the design, construction, implementation, and long-term livability of a community is complex, there are some simple certainties. This figure shown here with a picture from Smarter Growth Initiative that's titled Building from the Bottom Up hopes to illustrate some of the vertical realities of those certainties, those of the otherwise flat and linear infrastructure that services a community. The pipes and servicing needs of citizens and their employers for commercial buildings, they're long and winding. New home buyers pay for those pipes. New community growth is paid for by the new home buyer. The pipes, parks, roads that become town assets, those are all paid for by those citizens. But they become your assets for which ratepayer dollars pay to maintain that infrastructure. So, just going to back up. So when it comes to linear infrastructure, so the width of that lot gets wider. All that's increased is the length of sidewalk, length of asphalt, length of pipe, length of fiber that you've invested in the ground. So that's the linear key infrastructure that we're dealing with when it comes to side yards. So new homeowners pay for those servicing costs, but when it comes to the tax base, the majority of your property taxes, something that I didn't bring new now, but I think a 2017 document called How We Grow, that was for public engagement on understanding how taxes are formed, identified quite clearly for people that when you increase the length but you don't increase the size of the house, it's hard to increase the assessment of the property, reducing your ability to pick up the taxes needed to pay for that infrastructure that you'll own long-term and pay in half the life cycle. So I reiterate, and I'm open to your questions, approval of this amendment we feel will increase affordability and choice for your homeowners, will help your property tax assessment and return through the efficient use of land. It allows opportunities for streetscape variety that are unchanged by the widening of the lot. And it creates long-term land use efficiencies that you've agreed to in your municipal development plan for densities, your Calgary Regional Partnership, and now Calgary Metropolitan Region Board densities that you're look to hit with your land use plans. And I will touch on that one thing I didn't have in here that came up at your CPC. There was a question that no one is building on R2. This is some of the current approvals that you have. The crosshatch is all R1. So while you may not have had a lot of lots recently that are R1 zoned or subdivided, you still have a lot of R1 zoning that's affected by this affordability issue. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Okay, is there any questions? No? Thank you for your presentation.
My pleasure.
Oh.
Thank you.
Your light's still not on. Councillor McFadden,
Thank you, sir.
I see you have one question.
Excellent. Thank you.
Please.
Your Worship,
Three.
3 questions.
Okay.
So, so as part of the council that brought that in, the big driving force of reducing that was frustrations and challenges with on-street parking. And that was trying to find a solution in the mix to do that. So if this isn't the right tool to deal with on-street parking, what is the right tool to deal with on-street parking?
Through your worship to Councillor McFadden, if I had that answer, this would certainly not be my job. I would be a genius that had solved something that is certainly worth talking about. I think, you know, we're still to see in larger urban areas, there's a surprising move to remove parking minimums and basically just leave it up to human behavior and let it sort itself out. I don't think necessarily that's the way to run a residential community, but it is something that we're seeing as a response to the fact that regardless of the amount of minimum or maximum you put in on a parking level, you don't seem to ever have enough. So I don't have a perfect answer for you. I can say that, although this doesn't help my tax assessment argument, opportunities where you have limited parking areas would be utilization of MR or reserve land that's in the town's control to have guest parking or permit parking for a time frame. Utilization of lanes, you don't do a lot of lane parking here. If you have any services in lanes, they're 8 meters to 10 meters wide. 10-meter wide asphalt lane is as wide as your asphalt carriageway in a residential street. So you could park there and still drive through. So those are some solutions.
So that would be my challenge to the development community that wants to be active and successful in Cochrane, is bring your solutions to us with parking solutions, whatever that might be. The next question then is affordability. Can you expand on how this change makes properties more affordable and Cochrane more attractive?
Through your worship to Councillor McFadden, I do believe there are people on the sales end of the spectrum who will do a better job of answering that than me tonight, but I will tell you that what I tried to account it to is basically that linear infrastructure component. When your residents and your new residents, new home buyers pay for existing communities, they're paying for that linear infrastructure every foot. So when you add 2 feet to a property, that is something they're going to have to pay for. If in turn that lot is, say it's a lot that's the same size as it would have been at 4 feet, well that's less feet that they can build on, so to speak, since you're dealing with minimums, right? The bylaw is just setting minimums, minimum side yards, minimum front setback, minimum rear setback. So what the trade-off then is, if there is room and a design that works, then you extend into the rear setbacks as far as there's room to do so. So I think from an affordability side, it's simply that, right? You're taking away, first of all, the option and choice for people to design the home they want to, but you're also adding 2 feet that are just unbuildable for livable square footage.
Okay. And then one of the comments we hear from the community when we're stressed about growth is that it's looking like Calgary. How do we make it look less like Calgary? I want to feel like I'm in a unique community, and a lot of our homes, they look the same in the entire built area. So is this a tool that can allow some of these homes to look unique, to be distinct, so that we don't get the same template of homes?
Through your worship to Councillor McFadden, I think those tools exist. I mean, you know, through the process of the 4 years from 2014 to now, right? One of the things you developed, again, much to our objection for when the timing is the community enhancement matrix, right? You also have developers who, when they submit their neighborhood plans, are talking about their architectural controls and what type of details that they're requiring homeowners to build. Those are the ways to work with your development partners, to leave that choice up to the individual and try and accomplish some of your design standards. You do have some standards that are noteworthy. Anyone tries to do a neighborhood plan, you have heritage guidelines, right, that sort of dictate how you want Cochrane to look. I like to believe that the developers that we represent and the builders we represent want to comply with what people that want to buy in Cochrane want to see on their home. So I think those are the tools. And of course, your new land use bylaw will give us an opportunity over the next 18 months to evaluate other opportunities to make sure that Cochrane still retains its unique identity, its unique feel. And I know that sitting at the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board, that was the first thing that came up from most municipalities was, we still want to be ourselves. We want to be who we want to be. Let's try and maintain that. And I think that those are the tools to you, the municipal development plan, your land use plan, your neighborhood plans, and your relationships with your development partners.
And then I know I said 3, but it's going to be 4.
All right.
Again, one of the points, or one of the things that Council today was trying to get at was to increase lot sizes. The idea was that if that was changed, setbacks would change, then the developer would have to increase the lot to put the same house. That's not what happened. It kind of went the other way. You had lots stayed the same, homes got smaller. So then the question becomes lot size. So can you give me kind of a comparison of, in our land use bylaw, Cochrane's lot sizes? Are we comparable, smaller, larger with Cochrane or Calgary, Airdrie, our neighbors?
Well, having not seen the new communities come on in Calgary, traditionally here you're a little bit wider than you would be for a similar price product in Calgary. It just comes down again, that those raw servicing costs, levy costs, and land costs sort of set the bar for you. And then, so you can end up getting a little bit of a wider lot. And part of it is, again, if that's what the market wants, that's what you'll have, right? When you look at, I don't have the picture up here that I was hoping to have, but when you look at, say, Riviera and Rivercrest, they had called a large cul-de-sac that they did that was solely intended to be an option for the marketplace. They wanted an even wider lot. It took a little bit longer to sell, but it was provided and it met their demand. So I see you're a little bit wider than the smaller lots in Airdrie. You're a little bit wider than the west side lots in Calgary. But again, it's, it comes down to that affordability. The option has always been you could get a little bit more in Cochrane for your price.
All right, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Ryan Murray.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. My name is Ryan Murray. I'm the operations manager for single-family homes for Trico Homes. My colleagues and I are here tonight in support of returning to a minimum 1.2 meter side yard for R1 land use. Trico currently builds in 22 communities in Cochrane, Airdrie, Okotoks, and Calgary. In Cochrane, we've been a stakeholder in the community since the inception of Heritage Hills over 10 years ago and are currently building in Heritage Hills and Riviera of Riversong. And I think it's important to note that both Heritage Hills and the current Riviera were grandfathered when this amendment changed in 2006. And so we are currently building double front drive garage homes with a 1.2 meter setback and have a considerable amount of consumer data that we're here to present today. Trico is a 2018 Best of World Award winner as a benefit corporation and a 3-time HomeStars winner, including 2018, which is measured on feedback from our customers. I want to share that Trico is an acronym: trust, respect, integrity, community, and opportunity. And I share that because I think it's important not just to know what we do, but who we are. As I said, we're here to represent not just our position as a builder in the community, but the wants and needs of our customers. And all of whom choose to maximize the value of their new home purchase in their own way, but all of them in the same way. And that's considering all of the options available to them, including the guidelines that are set out in the land use, as well as those guidelines set by the developer within the architectural controls. In this day and age, especially, but I believe always, customers will make decisions to maximize the value of their new home so it best fits for their families. Increasing the side yard requirement means that customers are paying for that additional land and that it may not translate into that value calculation for them unless they choose it. And I'll explain that briefly in a moment. A 5-foot side yard means that a family determining what they can afford for their home and the needs of their family must pay for an additional 2 feet. That's that additional 1 foot on either side. And based on really easy math, whether you're taking a front footage price of $4,000 or $5,000, that's $8,000 to $10,000 that a family must consider for the things that they need or want for their home. So side yards don't necessarily give more space to play with their kids in yards. They don't add additional square footage for their homes, for growing families, or specific needs. They don't add space in garage for recreation, which is definitely a part of of lifestyle here in Cochrane. And important, at least in my opinion, that additional requirement isn't in adjacent communities that I believe inspires those same customers to want to live in Cochrane and grow with it. 4 feet has been a successful side yard requirement, and we hope that for future customers, it can continue to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have one question. You pointed out, I think you did a good job in the value proposition. So the extra 2 feet that you're saying that the average homeowner would have to pay for if we were not to do this. But you did mention that the option is still there. So what you meant by that, and I'm just asking for clarification, is that a homeowner, if they choose to have that extra 2 feet, can choose to still have that and pay for that if they want it in another product available somewhere else in our community.
Yes, Your Worship, and if I can clarify, and I think it speaks to your earlier question at the beginning of this process. In both Heritage Hills and in Riviera, where we're currently building homes, the developer has set a maximum side yard, and I believe it's 6 feet in both communities. So between the minimum of 4 feet and the maximum of 6 feet, there's some flexibility and discretion for a home buyer to make decisions. And that may mean a wider home that offers 2,700 square feet, or it may mean that they can bump out the garage to ensure that they can fit their quad along with their 2 cars. But it also could mean for someone who says, I can only afford 2,000 square feet, that a narrower home is possible under a reasonable measurement. Because, I would argue that, you don't want someone to have a 12-foot home, because then you have this, miniature cartoon-like home amongst this beautiful streetscape in any one of these communities. But organically, you can get this variability in the space between homes. And Your Worship, I think the example you used, that maybe there's 6 foot on one side and 4 foot on another, and we know in reality that's what's playing out in our communities.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Reid?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if I have a stupor thought tonight or just what, but I thought the last time we spoke, we talked about a 0 lot line, and I'm wondering how this proposal and your interest in a 0 lot line differs.
Through his worship to Councillor Reid, they're related. And so in our experience, 0 lot line addresses affordability as well. And in municipalities where we are building 0 lot line homes, the home is set to the property line. And in our experience, then there's a 5-foot setback on the other side. And what carries is this consistent 5-foot separation. But if you take a typical build where there's 4 feet on either side, so that's 8 feet on a lot that's accounted for, that's 3 feet. And so now that individual is able to save $15,000 on their home purchase, and there's still an adequate amount of space in between these homes because it's positioned differently on the boundaries, on the property line. So in this instance, it's a traditional build form where there's a setback on either side, and we're talking about 2 feet accounted for in 2 different spots. Excuse me. But a 0 lot line puts all of that space to one side and diminishes the total number by making sure that everything is set in the same pattern. Does that clarify?
I think so. If I could, a supplemental question. So all the virtues for moving or supporting this bylaw would be also implemented on a 0 lot line then as well?
through his worship to Councillor Reid. If I understand your question correctly, and please correct me if I don't, what you're asking me is, would we be suggesting a similar setback requirement for a zero lot line? It would vary somewhat, because I wouldn't be suggesting a 4-foot side yard. I'd be suggesting a 5-foot side yard, which allows for a little more space, but because it's all on one side, now you have a suitable unencumbered right-of-way that ensures that there's always a pathway in between homes, that you can have that consistent spacing between homes, because the other side is always going to be on that property line all the way to the side.
Okay, and just one other question.
Sure.
The part of the rationale for this side yard setback was, I'm just reading it from the documentation that you screened there. It said that it would increase privacy, improve landscaping or streetscaping, and a better capacity for street parking. Does the zero lot line provide those virtues as well?
So the way the zero lot line that we've participated in, from a privacy perspective, on one side of the home, there's no allowable penetrations. So there's no windows on the one side, and there's no venting, for example. And so from that respect, I would say yes, it accomplishes that, because through construction, you can certainly incorporate things like glass on the other side of the home and on the front of the home in a way that light is still coming into the home. In stairwells, you can utilize skylights and solar tubes to ensure that the home is still bright, which customers want, and so that does accomplish that. Sorry, can you repeat the list again?
Streetscape and better capacity for street parking were the other two.
And when you say streetscape, if I remember correctly, this is the presentation of what it looks like.
I'm assuming so, yes.
Yeah, I believe it does, because to me, the streetscape mostly is addressed by the collaboration and direction that's set by the developer and approved by the municipality through their planning process. And so, that streetscape is always visible in a way that they understand the architectural styles and the requirements of what the facades of those homes will look like. And also that there isn't repetition of the style of home. So you couldn't, for example, build one model that looked the same on the front over and over and over again. There's going to be some variability in the consumer decision making and what's allowed. And also that, in what we have built, you can ensure that those zero lot lines are positioned in opposing ways. So the entryways would marry side by side, if you can understand that visual, as opposed to the same poached stand over, right? And that gives a greater visual to that entry prominence of the house and allows that green space to carry together, which I think, gives this sentiment that there is an enhanced green space to those. So yes, I would. I think the last one is street parking. And if Charles doesn't figure it out, I'm going to try to. But again, we would love this solution, but build forms for customers have changed in a way that people do have more cars. And we build homes to ensure that we can accommodate cars within garages and parking, garage pads that allow for some of that parking, because we know the more cars you add anywhere, it's a diminishing commodity. Like at some point, it's just gone. And then you get into areas where recreation is important, like Cochrane, and then you increase the size of those vehicles, and that's again, so no, it doesn't accomplish that, to answer your question, Councillor Reid, but to me, in most communities, human behavior is a positive one, I would like to believe. And certainly if, you build it in a way that people can connect with one another, which I do believe that Cochrane is that community, that those kinds of things sort out in the wash, so to speak.
So thanks for clarifying that. I recognize that we're not talking about zero lot line as part of this bylaw tonight, but I appreciate the understanding the differences, and thank you.
Through his worship, you're welcome, Councillor Reid. Kept me on my toes. Through his worship, while I'm here, if Councillor McFadden, if I could offer a builder's perspective to some of the questions you asked, if you still had clarification about cantilevers or anything, I'd be happy to. Yeah, that would be fine.
See Councillor Wilson has another question.
I'm just a quick one for you, Mr. Murray. I'm wondering, from your perspective, I'm getting that you're a proponent of zero lot line, obviously. What do you think is the optimal side yard setbacks for Cochrane, if any at all, if you were to make the decisions? What merits do you see? Do you feel 1.2 is the optimal minimum, or do you think we should have a side yard minimum?
For R1, I think 1.2 is absolutely sufficient, because we build that way today. It allows customers to build good-sized home. You know, the width of their home is an important dynamic when considering the model that are going to choose for their home, because the width of the home certainly determines, you know, what can play into the home. You know, you can, we know simple math, right? Length times width, but you narrow a home, you make it longer, you now have different shapes and forms of the rooms that customers use to interact with their family. And so with respect to R1, 1.2 is certainly what we're advocating for. But, you know, product types are different. So, for example, my references to Councillor Reid were zero lot line. I would say a 5-foot side yard is suitable, because, you know, with a zero lot line positioning to one side, I think you want to increase that at a reasonable level to ensure that there are those unencumbered spaces between homes.
Thank you. And from talks with previous home builders, I've heard before that when home buyers are shopping, parking is almost never a concern brought up initially when they're shopping for a home. It's something that's comes after they bought the home, and then we get flooded with emails about it, but it's not something that's on the top of the mind of the consumer. Can you corroborate that?
Through his worship to Councillor Wilson, if I understand the clarification you're asking for is the question about the community parking doesn't come up through the sales process, is that correct? Or parking at all?
Just parking at all. I've heard that's not often top of mind for a consumer. It's something that we hear.
Our data would show that it is an important topic with respect to their home.
Okay.
Can I fit my cars in my garage, and can my cars fit on my driveway? That is an important consideration, and our consumer data reflects that. And that's really the sentiment of a lot of what we'll present today is our customers are telling us what they need, and Trico does a lot of work with our purchaser profiles to make sure that we're designing and building homes that suit their needs. From a community perspective, that I would say is anecdotal until they get to interact with their neighbors, which at any one point in a new community takes time.
I was asking the first part of that question. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your perspective on that. Thanks.
Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
Kelsey Clark is next on the list. Good evening.
Hello. Kelsey and I are going to present this portion together. My name's Ted Tam. I'm the General Sales Manager for Trico Homes. And Kelsey is an area sales manager for us in Crestmont today, and previously in Cochrane, in Heritage Hills, and also Riviera. There are certainly ideas or misconceptions out there which say that a wider lot or a larger side yard means that you can either build a larger home, A, or B, give customers greater flexibility when building their home. Kelsey and I are here today to point out that some facts based on our research on our customer database is a representative sample size that we firmly believe, if extrapolated, is an accurate representation of what our homeowners and any person seeking to pursue an R1 lot here in Cochrane would want in their search for a new home.
So what we did is we pulled our purchaser profiles since 2015, and we found that 75 families built with Trico Homes in Riviera. Of those 75 families, 61% of them chose to make changes to their home to better fit their family's needs. The reason they were able to modify their home to meet their needs was due to the flexibility of the 4-foot side yard setback. So they would make decisions to either widen the family room, the garage, the mudroom, based on what they were looking for their family. Any questions?
Well, I was expecting a lot more. You were gonna go into this big
No.
data pool, okay. Council, no questions? Okay, that's it.
Perfect.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Got it?
Brent O'Neill. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brent O'Neill, and I'm an Assistant Development Manager at Melcor Developments. I'm here in support of the 5-foot side yard setback reduction to a 4-foot side yard setback. Melcor is developing Sunset Ridge, along with our builders, Jamin Built, Homes by Avi, Douglas Homes, and Excel Homes. These builders, along with the trades and suppliers they employ, have an important economic impact in the town of Cochrane. This bylaw amendment is important to the well-being of these businesses in these challenging economic times. Between 2016 and 2018, there has been a 27% erosion in home affordability due to the new mortgage rules changes. That means that in 2016, someone with the average Cochrane household income of $120,000 per year could potentially afford a home with a $764,000 purchase price. However, in 2018, they would only afford a home with a $557,000 purchase price. That's an erosion of over $200,000 in buying power. This is why achieving effectiveness in our product design is more important than ever. It is possible to achieve effective product design with flexibility in the land use bylaw. It is essential that our builders are able to align their product with consumer market expectations. One of those expectations is that when you come out of Calgary to a smaller regional market such as Cochrane, you're able to achieve a price advantage. That price advantage may only be $40,000. However, with the mortgage rule change, that $40,000 may make or break the ability of a home buyer to purchase the home they desire. What we've seen recently is erosion of that price advantage in Cochrane. That means that you can often buy the same home in Cochrane for the same price as you can in Calgary. The cost to the home buyer for an additional foot in each side yards is $10,000. Sorry, each of the side yards is $10,000. That money has to come from somewhere, and maybe the buyer would prefer stainless steel appliances or an upgrade to interior finishes or an additional architectural controls on the home. Other municipalities have made or are making changes to their land use bylaw to help keep their respective market share. The reduction of the 5-foot side yard setback requirement to 4 feet is a step towards realigning with the Cochrane price point advantage and retaining that market share. As you've heard, I'm sure before, this all ties back to the helping achieve the town's 3 to 4% growth target, and will allow Cochrane to compete with the 14 new communities in Calgary that have recently opened as a result of the growth management overlay removal. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your presentation. Mr. Tam, you were, yep, with Kelsey. Cam Hart. Good evening.
Hi, guys. Mayor, member of council, my name's Cam Hart. I'm here representing Tammany Communities. We are the developer of Riversong, and we are definitely here, we're definitely here in support of amending the current R1 side yards from 5 feet to 4 feet. go over some things that you've probably very recently heard this evening. We agree with the points raised by the previous speakers. As a company, Tammany, we have an enormous amount of time and resources invested in the town, and ultimately, we want our community to be great. We want Cochrane to be a great place to live, or we wouldn't be here doing what we're doing. We understand and we can relate to the issue of on-street parking in Cochrane and the lack thereof. It's certainly not the only municipality that faces this issue. We also understand the desire for Cochrane communities to be best of class in their appearance. What we are struggling to understand is how parking and streetscape issues are adequately addressed through a 1-foot increase in the side yard in the R1 district. We do know that the additional 1 foot of side yard has a direct impact on affordability and costs anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 per lot. That's the cost in land alone. So when that's passed along to a new home purchaser in Cochrane, that amount is actually close to $9,000 or $13,000 a lot. That's a significant amount of money. And that's for the exact same size house with little additional value. The increased lot width is primarily 1 feet of extra space along the side of a house, which is largely unusable and unnoticeable. So ultimately, we hope council will consider the practical consequences of an additional 1 foot side yard. It will decrease affordability, and it will not alleviate parking concerns, and it will not noticeably enhance the streetscape of a community. Thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I don't see any. Thank you. Nada Cortliff?
Good evening. I'm Nada Cortliff, also with...
Sorry, Nada.
That's okay. Happens all the time. Also with Trico Homes. I am a manager of the multifamily sales and business development. I wanted to discuss this topic in more of the context of more than just talking about side yards, but how it affects the home. I wanted you to think of it in the context of families finding a home that they can afford with features that are important to them. In the communities that we build in Cochrane, as you've heard, we see a large demographic of couples with young children buying their next home. 68%, in fact, are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. We know that 60% of these families are moving from Calgary. They're drawn by the lifestyle and amenities that Cochrane has to offer. This is the Cochrane that we want to see grow. Families settling roots and their generations of children doing the same. Think of your own children as they're looking to purchase a home, where affordability becomes the top reason where and when they choose to buy. Although the buyer group we've seen in Riviera and Heritage Hills have a larger budget than most, they do want to spend their money in their kitchen, bathrooms, and other interior finishings that are important to them, similar to most buyer groups we see. Increasing the size of the side yards has very little value to them, and as we know is the case with most buyers today. I'll ask you to consider who is buying in Cochrane in the future, and how will we grow this amenity-rich town for generations to come. I also know from selling homes in Cochrane myself for a number of years that a land use with flexible and guidelines that support customers' ability to maximize the value of their home will support the growth that Cochrane wants. In this case, I do believe it means reducing the guidelines to a 4 foot minimum side yard. I also know, to address some of the other questions, that around what does make a home attractive and what are people looking for, that people care about the exterior of the home, but in the sense of the architecturals, which we, as a builder, work closely with our developer and the town to make sure that we uphold the standards that we want to achieve. So you can achieve the look and attractiveness of a community through architectural requirements. I know, like anecdotally, from homeowners that I sold to, that they like the, either extra features and different colors and different things we would put on the exterior of the home to make it more attractive and not just be a really simple kind of box, box on box kind of look. So that's how one of the ways that I see you can increase the streetscape appearance. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of our speakers list. Is there anyone else in the gallery that wishes to speak in favor or opposed to the bylaw? Nope. Staff, is there anything else that you want to close with? Nope. Okay, I would just have one question for you out of that. We talked a little bit about zero lot line and how this relates. The way I see it, and I'm asking if this is correct or not, that the side yard setback and zero lot line are two different products that would be available within the R1 zoning. So a developer or whomever coming forward for requesting R1 land use could have either or both or one or the other in their R1. Is that how that would work? Obviously, we don't have a zero lot line for us, but.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is a good question. The way that administration is viewing this is providing options through land use districts. So we have our R1 district as it is right now with the current setback of 1.5 meters. The proposal to bring that to the 1.2. That is one option in terms of a single detached dwelling district for the town of Cochrane. Now, the zero lot line moving forward, and this is something that we're going to look at through our land use bylaw review, would be creating a new land use district to accommodate that zero lot line product. So it wouldn't be replacing the R1 district that we currently have in our land use bylaw, but rather, rather adding another land use district as a potential option for a neighborhood or for a community.
Okay, so there would be two different tools available within the land use.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Federico, you have a question?
I have one question for staff. I know that 4 feet side yards is for the National Fire Code, but do we have actual data that shows the difference, maybe in stats from fire-related incidents from 1.2 to 1.5?
Through the mayor to Councillor Federico, no, we don't have that data with us here tonight. We have circulated this to our fire department. We did receive comments back from them. Their comments were that the 1.2 was, as previously mentioned before, is a very common standard. The fire code can accommodate a variety of different building types and distances from the property lines. But the 1.2 is the standard that still allows for a variety of different features. The closer you get to a side yard, there's just different standards in terms of the building code and the fire code. So, and that is in terms of the types of materials, whether or not you can have a window and those sorts of things, right? So our fire services have indicated to us that they are okay with the 1.2 meters. But to answer your question, no, we don't have the data for the recent fires such as the Fort McMurray fire and the data that would have indicated 1.5 as opposed to 1.2, whether that would have made a difference or not. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we will close that public hearing and move into the next one. Bylaw 35, 2018 Land Use Bylaw Amendment Development Notification Signs. I believe that's this handout. Thank you for everyone who spoke coming out. Yeah.
I'll pull this up later. I'm just going to put it here for now.
I think you got it covered.
Okay, yes, I think you might get the idea. Okay. Okay. So good evening, Mayor Genung and members of council. I'm here to present to you Bylaw 35, 2018, which is specifically a land use bylaw amendment to require development notification signs for certain planning applications. And that's for your consideration and receiving comments for the public hearing. Now, a little bit of the background. A little over a year ago, I think it might even have been a bit longer, there was some concern about how the town currently notified or made the community aware of planning proposals or development proposals. Currently, the town does the minimum as per the Municipal Government Act in terms of notifying the public of development approvals. So the discussion centered around that and how can the town improve that notification and ultimately the awareness of the proposed developments within a particular community. This did align with Council's priority for improved community engagement activities. So as a result of that discussion, Council directed administration to explore community notification for development proposals, and that's what's being presented here tonight. Administration did propose a previous bylaw, number 6, 2018, earlier this year. We have refined that bylaw, and that's the one that's being proposed for your consideration through bylaw 35. So what exactly is being proposed? This bylaw proposes the requirement of development notification signs for certain applications, development permit applications, infill subdivision applications, and land use redesignations or rezonings. There are some exceptions that are proposed in this bylaw, and that's really around the signs. So not requiring a development notification sign for most signs within the town of Cochrane, especially the temporary signs, but also exempting out the variances for existing developments. So through our compliance process, what happens is there's usually a number of developments that don't necessarily adhere to our land use bylaw. And so they do require variances for the existing structures on that property. And so these would also be exempt from requiring these notification signs. Bylaw 35 also is proposing to establish what information is to be included on the notification sign. And that's the handout that you have there before you and what's in front of you here. So really it's the contact information to the town of Cochrane, so directing people to come and contact the town, the civic and legal address of the property, a description of what is being proposed, as well as the use of the land, a file number for reference, and then any other either diagram or concept or other information that would be required by the town. It also establishes the notification sign sizes, and that's what's being proposed or has been brought to you tonight. So we use metric in the land use bylaw. I will convert that to feet because it's a bit easier to understand. So the 0.12 square meters is when the property is less than 500 square meters. So the size of the sign is in relation to the size of the property. And just to note, the 500 square meters is in fact the size of the largest residential property within the town. So it won't be the size of the notification is what's in front of you here, which is basically an 8.5 by 11 sign. So this is what would be posted in front of the property for the various applications, whether it be rezoning, development, or the infill subdivisions. Similarly, this size of sign will also be required when there's a change of use, for example, or any adjustment for a development permit for a non-residential, so mainly commercial or industrial bay or commercial retail unit. That is under that size as well for the property. Now, when you have a sign or a size of a property that increases, so between the 501 square meters and 4,047 square meters, which is an acre, you bump up to this size. And that's the 0.37 square meters, which is essentially 2 feet by 2 feet. So this is the size of the sign, and this is what would be required to be posted in front of those lots that are between those sizes. And then for any lot that is larger than 1 acre. For those proposals is the sign in front of you, and that's the 4 foot by 4 foot. The reasons for the signs is, to give that sense of scale, I guess, for the development, but also for a bit of the cost considerations for these signs. The majority of the development applications that we get are residential in nature, so to keep the costs lower, that's where the 11 by 17 sign size comes into play. There is a bit of a cost jump when you jump into the 2 foot by 2 foot and the 4 foot by 4 foot signs. It also establishes the bylaw where the signs can be located on the property, and it needs to be visible and readable. I'm going to put a little asterisk next to the readable from a public road or space. We certainly do not want people to be distracted while they drive and trying to read the sign in detail. As you can see, there's a lot of information on there. But certainly we want to get their attention that, hey, there is something being proposed on this site, and where it'll prompt them to either contact the town directly or come back and look at that sign and find out more information about what is being proposed. And ultimately, we want these signs to be posted within 2 meters of the property adjacent to a public road. Now, the duration of the sign posting is also proposed through this bylaw. Specifically for development permits, we're proposing that the development signs remain on the property until 30 days after the appeal period ends. So that's a month after essentially a decision has been made and the appeal period is over, as well as 30 days after a decision from the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. So if there is an appeal and a decision is made by the SDAB, this notification sign will still remain on that property. For infill subdivisions, the development notification sign shall remain on the subject property until a decision is made by the subdivision authority, and that is the town of Cochrane. For land use redesignations or rezonings, the signs will remain 30 days after the bylaw is passed by council, or when the bylaw is defeated by council. If it is defeated, there's no need for the sign to remain on the property. We also need to create relevant definitions, just for clarity, and that is for the development notification signs themselves, but also what we mean by infill, and that is key for the infill subdivision component of the bylaw. We did do public consultation for this. We did circulate this to internal and external departments. There was no concerns that were raised. We did take this to a developer liaison meeting earlier this year. They were generally supportive of the bylaw. We did take it to the Cochrane Planning Commission to their last meeting in November. They support the bylaw. They did want to make one addition, and that was specifically for the exceptions section, which I mentioned earlier. And they wanted to still have the development authority to have the option of requiring a posting of the development notification sign for those variances for the existing developments. So we were proposing to exempt them altogether, but it was brought up that, possibly for the scale of some of those variances, if they're quite large in scale of maybe not being in conformance with the bylaw, the community should have an opportunity to know what that's about. And so leaving that to the discretion of the development authority. So that was one of the comments that they had provided there as well. The public hearing was advertised in the newspaper in accordance with the Municipal Government Act. And the recommendation tonight is that council receives and considers all the comments and information presented during the public hearing for Bylaw 35, 2018. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay. Councilor Reid?
Yeah, just to thank you for your presentation, and this may be a flash of the blinding obvious, but who actually covers the cost of that signage? Is that the developer?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Sorry, I did not have that in my presentation. So what's being proposed through you, Mayor Genung, is that town administration will print off the 11 by 17s for the applicants for those smaller parcels, but anything between over the 500 square meters, when you get into the 2 foot by 2 foot and the 4 foot by 4 foot, those costs would be covered by the applicant.
Okay, if I could ask 2 more questions. And just a supplemental that one then. So I'm assuming you have the equipment to be able to do that and it's all reasonable?
Yes, so the administration has looked into that, and so we would have the equipment available. Yeah, the one thing that we would need to consider is the lamination of these, of the print-offs. So right now they're in paper form, but we would need to laminate them.
Okay. And the two other questions I had were, what are the implications if there's a violation of the posting in terms of duration or effective period? Like if they get it up in time or don't take it down in time, are there any implications for that violation?
That's a good question. So they wouldn't be adhering to the land use bylaw because we are making amendments to the land use bylaw if, so for example, if the sign isn't posted or if they take the sign down, it's not up for the duration, it's not within 2 meters of then they would be in violation of the land use bylaw, and we would enforce on that, and there are fine implications to that.
Financial penalties?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Then the last question I had was, in the course of your research and preparation for this, and I really appreciate all that you've done, how did you come up with that hideous orange color?
Well, the orange was very specific. We did have brown. You may have seen an earlier version that was brought forward through bylaw 6. We changed the orange simply because we wanted it to get noticed. Orange is going to catch people's attention. Orange is distinct. It is part of the Cochrane color palette, also to add, so it was within our color range, as is the brown. But specifically, the whole point of the development notification sign is to bring attention to it. And we want the community to take notice of these signs, whether it's orange or brown or, yeah.
Yeah, it's distracting, and I thought that was one of the requirements that you didn't wish to achieve, and I hope it doesn't get mixed up with an election sign, so it's,
Oh, okay, right.
I'll leave it at that.
Did not think about that, yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Wilson?
Okay, just quickly, I disagree with Councillor Reid. I think they look just lovely. They're well done.
Okay.
If I'm applying to have a home-based business change, so that would require one of these signs and just a regular size residential R1 house. Can you just walk me through how that looks? The sign is free because it's printed by the planning department, and then you post it in your window for how long?
Through Mayor Janung. No, it wouldn't be posted in your window. It needs to be posted within 2 meters of your property line. That fronts onto a public roadway. And so the point of that is so that it is readable, it is noticeable by passerbys, and because if you have it further back in the window, people might not be able to read the details of the sign and be able to contact and that sort of thing, especially given the size, right? And they're not able to trespass.
So it'll be on legs or little pegs or something on your front lawn? Is that the idea? Okay. And how long would it likely sit there for if there was just 30 days after the appeal, but there'd be a period before that would be sitting there too? So how long in total would it likely be there, just as an idea?
Yeah, so the requirement is to post the sign within 7 days of the application. So an application is made, we deem it complete, and within 7 days of that, the sign will be posted. It will be posted for the duration of the circulation period. It'll be posted after a decision has been made by the town, and also all through the development appeal period. And then, again, for an additional 30 days after that either that appeal period is over or the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board has made a decision if it has gone to an appeal. So to give you a sense of the length of time, you will have a 30-day circulation period. So you're looking at 30 days. You may have another 7 to 14 days for the decision and that sort of thing. And then you have a 21-day appeal period. And then you have 30 days on top of that. So the sign will be there for quite a while. And that was done very purposely so that people within the community have a very long time to know what is potentially happening on that property.
And it would be up to the person to keep the sign visible if it's middle of January, keep snow off of it. And
yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Eager to hear what we get in the public hearing here.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I think well done. I think the color's just fine. My only question really is the QR code. aspect. I kind of thought that was a dying communications technology.
Yeah. So the QR code through Mayor Janung to Councillor McFadden, yeah, it's the technology in our smartphones has gotten such that all you need to do with the QR code is open up your camera, focus it on the QR code, and it'll automatically prompt you to a link that'll take you to our town website. On our town website, we have a development map. And in that development map, it'll show you all the applications that are being made within the town of Cochrane currently. And so that will allow you to focus in on this property, and it'll give you the information about this application and also the status. So yes, the QR code may look a little dated. It is still applicable. The technology in our phones is still allowing for this to happen. And we thought it was a great addition just to provide that ease of information and being able to get that information through our development map that we created here at the town. So.
Okay, yeah, I don't know where the QR codes, but the development map website itself or web page, that's a really great tool. So I might call you less often.
Okay.
Just look it up myself.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it for questions.
Great, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
I don't think we have any speakers signed up. No? Okay. No more? Okay. We'll close. I see someone moving to the, no? Okay. We'll close that public hearing and we'll take a 2-minute recess. 4-minute recess.